Hello and welcome to our latest video. We, quite by accident or by mere chance, came across what we'd say now is an old article about a top Russian mathematician named Anatoly Fomenko. And it reads, why Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology says that history is all a fake. According to Anatoly Fomenko, pictured here, according to Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology, history as we know it was fabricated by Christian scholars. Discover why he believes it and why he's not 100% crazy. Well, if he's a top Russian mathematician, he must have some intelligence. But everybody's flawed, aren't they? Anatoly Fomenko delivers a lecture to students of Lomonosov Moscow State University, 1972. Almost everything you thought you knew about history is wrong. The Roman Empire emerged in the late Middle Ages, not the 8th century BC. In fact, ancient Rome, Greece and Egypt as you know them didn't exist at all. And Jesus lived and died in the 12th century AD. Or so says the new chronology theory developed by Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko. Since the 1970s, Fomenko, born in 1945, has been building, refining and publishing his ideas, claiming that the history we all know to be true has been largely fabricated, that centuries upon centuries worth of history was either faked by devious scribes or wildly misinterpreted by scholars, a theory not unlike the infamous phantom time hypothesis. We will probably cover that in part 2 of this video. While the finer points of the Fomenko theory are as convoluted and confusing as you might expect, the guiding principle is that recorded history before the 11th to 14th centuries is generally unreliable for various reasons. Virtually all extant documents from the period before that time, Fomenko writes, are untrustworthy due to a number of factors: poor timekeeping devices, inconsistent record keeping, limited availability of surviving documents, lack of movable type, and so on. Moreover, Fomenko argues pre-Renaissance history was largely fabricated by a number of writers, most of whom did so at the behest of the Catholic Church and other Christian leaders of the time, so that they could present historical evidence to back up claims made in the Bible. And that's what we go deep into and look at the claims and try or strive to establish those claims as fact, making them established facts. We find the evidence, we let the evidence prove itself, and we also drive or strive to look at these scribes, these monks, these text writers, these old manuscripts, etc., and the latter new translated or newly translated copies of the so said or so claimed original ancient Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, Old English, Americanized English, etc. Okay. And we also do some journalism work behind the scenes, looking at these people. Like if we saw this picture here and there's something interesting about Joseph Scaliger, we would search for information on him and look at his lifestyle, his background, to see if there was anything dodgy about that person, or something unique, right, and totally flawless, if you can say that. Yeah. Along these lines, Fomenko specifically focused on the writings of 16th century French Christian scholar Joseph Scaliger. According to Fomenko, Scaliger ranks among the leading historians of the time who helped forge and propagate the false record of the pre-Renaissance history that persists to this day. And if historians weren't being outright devious, like Scaliger, then they were being devious in a more lazy way, Fomenko claims. That is, Renaissance scholars would simply invent ancient history based on contemporary people and events in order to create a, quote, authentic, unquote, history, as he calls it. For example, Fomenko believes that most Eurasian history between the 3rd and 11th centuries AD was concocted by historians of the 13th to 17th centuries AD, who created a false record of those prior centuries by filling that record with variations of events that were happening during the 13th to 17th centuries. A similar thing happened with the Bible, Fomenko claims. Well, as we said, we strive to find evidence for the claims, establish the facts, etc., etc., as before mentioned, and we have come across similar discrepancies or errors, contradictions, etc., like this guy Scaliger, before we ever heard of the guy. Uncanny, but that's what's been happening. A similar thing happened with the Bible, Fomenko claims. He writes that the Bible we know today is largely built on 11th to 14th century fabrications and revisions to older texts, and that these fabrications and revisions actually reflect events that were happening in the 11th to 14th centuries. So Fomenko theorizes that the Babylonian captivity described in the Bible, in which the Jews of the kingdom of Judah were invaded by Babylon and held captive there for 70 years in the 6th century BC, is actually a false history inspired by the nearly 70-year Avignon papacy period, in which 7 popes resided in Avignon, France, as opposed to Rome, due to pressure from the French monarchy. Why exactly Fomenko argues all of this and how he attempts to prove these claims is another matter entirely. Apart from his creation of the new chronology, Fomenko is a notable mathematician, so he's highly recognized, who has earned his doctorate. Taught at Moscow State Lomonosov University, became a member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, won a state prize of the Russian Federation for mathematics, and published some 250 works. It's this background in mathematics that helps explain how Fomenko began building the new chronology. In 1973, he began reading other writers' work about inconsistencies in historical data related to lunar cycles. When he began digging into such data himself, he concluded that many lunar eclipses and other celestial events could not have occurred when historians said they did, and thus major historical linchpins could be off by hundreds of years. There is another man on YouTube that looked at the biblical chronology, because everyone's saying that the Pharaoh of the Israel bondage in Egypt, them being slaves for 400 years, was actually off, that Ramses was not the king of that oppression, that it's a few centuries out, or a couple of centuries out, and it was somebody else. He corrected that. But he said that a lot of these biblical scholars, archaeologists, went out there and just fitted what they found, obviously to match the Bible. And that's why the chronological timetable was way off. Fomenko and his calculations, which have since been criticized by other writers, showed that certain celestial events that were said to have occurred in the time of Jesus had to have actually occurred some 1,000 years later. That's Isaac Newton. From there, Fomenko had help in building his new chronology thanks to several centuries worth of other writers, including Jean Hardouin of 17th century France, Nikolai Morozov of 19th century Russia, and even Isaac Newton, who had long been claiming that Christian scholars in the Middle Ages had misrecorded history either mistakenly or deviously. Fomenko picked up these ideas, added in a host of dubious mathematical calculations related to the astronomical record, and so the new chronology was born. In the decades since, Fomenko has published many volumes on the subject, although his only visibility outside of Russia is largely confined to the corners of the internet that feed on fringe theories. In fact, Fomenko's ideas haven't even received enough attention to warrant much rebuttal from the scientific community. Perhaps it's not worth refuting a theory that so obviously flies in the face of mountains of archaeological evidence, written records, carbon-dated artifacts, and on and on. Nevertheless, as misguided as Fomenko's claims are, there's a kernel of truth at the centre. History, and this becomes truer and truer the further back you go, is always a reconstruction to some extent. As Fomenko wrote, when we say that Brutus killed Caesar with a sword, the only thing it means is that some written source that managed to reach our time says so, and nothing but. The issue of just how faithfully documented history reflects real events is very complex and requires a special study. He's right, it's just probably not his kind of special study that we needed. And it suggests here, after this, look at Anatoly, Fomenko in the New Chronology, read up on other bizarre fringe theories, including the Paul is dead rumour, popular among some Beatle fans, as well as the belief that the moon landing was faked. And there's lots of comments underneath this article. This moon, you think people actually walked on a surface we can never know? So say you, Fomenko's office rocker, but will explicitly trust every word ever written down by a human being who other humans tells you is trustworthy. Do you know where you live? Like on Earth, I hope, right? I'm guessing you're like 16 or 17 years old and haven't ventured very far from your mind's basement, but I'm here to tell you people always lie all of the time. If they lie today about NASA, as they most certainly are lying, have you ever seen the LEM that supposedly landed on the moon? It's tape and curtain rods with some gold foil, and you really believe human beings survived a Tortian vacuum? Nobody has ever left this plane of existence and ventured beyond our skies. It's impossible. Check into the nuclear explosions in the upper atmosphere at 250 miles up. When we were trying to find our way out, but unfortunately they never got out, which has them faking space in every country with similar technology. Have you ever seen what stars actually look like? Dude, they've been deceiving everyone for the last 350 to 500 years with the silly notion that the Earth spins at 1,000 miles per hour. How would you land a plane on a spinning ball moving at 1,000 miles per hour? Oh, I keep forgetting the silliness of the magic that people believe in, claiming the atmosphere is attached to the Earth as we spin 1,000 miles per hour. Really? I mean, seriously, really? You believe that utter nonsense? Would you bet your child's life on it? I could never do that because I'd be condemning my son to death. Now I will put up my son's life up over the fact that the Earth is flat. Yeah, people never lie for power and money, never. NASA brings in 55 million a day, and you wouldn't lie to keep that money train rolling in. If you say so, no, I know you're just another obfuscating human bent on keeping the lie alive. I hope you get paid for those lies. Okay, there's some much more comments here. Sorry, you can't see the truth, you will eventually, God bless. And someone says, why you call names to other people just because they have a different opinion? Do you think you are special? Use your brain to argue if you can. People have the right of their opinion, or to their opinion. Who are you to tell what is wrong or right? You are a good case of a big head. Well, it's his opinion, isn't it? It's what he's realised. You get it, and are 100% correct. I wish more would wake up sooner. I also wish people would watch more Owen Benjamin. You are far from an idiot, bro. God bless. And just so much more here. Okay, so we are going to have a look at this man, Anatoly Fomenko. Okay, he's Russian, born 13th March 1945 in Stalino, USSR. He's a Soviet and Russian conspiracy theorist, mathematician, professor at Moscow State University, well known as a topologist, and a member of the Russian Academy of Sciences. He is the author of a pseudo-scientific theory. What's pseudo-scientific? Consists of statements, beliefs, or practices that claim to be both scientific and factual, but are incompatible with the scientific method. Pseudoscience is often characterized by contradictory, exaggerated, or unfalsifiable claims. Okay, so he is the author of a pseudo-scientific theory known as New Chronology, a pseudo-historical conspiracy theory proposed by Anatoly Fomenko, who argues that events of antiquity or history generally attributed to the civilizations of the Roman Empire, ancient Greece and ancient Egypt actually occurred at a different period in time. Uses biography, mathematical work. He's a full member, academician, how do you say that word? Academician. So he's part of an academy, of the Russian Academy of Sciences, 1994, International Higher Education Academy of Sciences, and Russian Academy of Technological Sciences, as well as a Doctor of Physics and Mathematics, 1972, a Professor, 1980, and Head of the Differential Geometry and Applications Department of the Faculty of Mathematics, and so forth and so forth. So he's quite bright, he's got all the qualifications, all the doctorates, etc., etc. So he's up there. Okay, here's all the mathematical references regarding him, the pseudo-historical, and even more references. So that's basically him in a nutshell. Now we're going to listen to this man here from Russia who can tell you all about him.
In this video, I would like to introduce you to a really, you can say bizarre theory. Okay, it's called Fomenko's New Chronology. Okay, it's really, kind of famous in the Russian-speaking world, but in the English-speaking world, kind of not so much. So I would essentially like to present it to the English-speaking audience. What the heck this Fomenko's chronology business is all about. So it's pretty unusual, peculiar theory. Was some people call it a conspiracy theory, some people call it a crackpot theory, some people call it a fringe theory, some say it's pseudoscience, it's pseudo-history. I guess it's all of the above, but to some extent, it's history, and as crazy as it is, I still think, there is value in it. Okay, so anyways, let me tell you a little bit about Fomenko's New Chronology. So, before you dismiss it as just nonsense, you should know that Anatoly Fomenko, the author of this theory, is extremely intelligent. Okay, he's one of the greatest mathematicians in the world. Okay, so he's a mathematician. He has written textbooks, and his treatises on mathematics have been translated into a lot of languages. So if you go to Amazon.com and you type in Anatoly Fomenko math, you will probably see his amazing 1994 book on topology, which is great. So I mean, it's definitely not a fool. We're talking about. It's not like people who do New Age, who really have absolutely no goddamn intellect. But I mean, it's really interesting, intelligent man who came up with this bizarre theory. So I think that in itself is interesting, and that's one of the reasons why you should check it out. So anyways, Anatoly Fomenko is a mathematician from Russia, working primarily in topology. Okay, and in late 1970s he decided to apply mathematical methods to history. Okay, so statistics in particular. So I'm not quite sure exactly what he did, but I know some of the things he did was to just analyze word frequency in different texts. Like for instance, you take a Russian historian document from the 12th century, and then you look at you take a look at an ancient Roman document, and then you look at a medieval Arabic treatise on history, and you just look at, let's say, a word such as killed. Okay, and you look at how many times the word comes up in each text. Then you look at the word such as overthrow, word like let's say bastard child, illegitimate king. You just kind of look at different words, and you just kind of look at how frequent the occurrence is. Okay, and incredibly, Fomenko said that the coincidences he found in all these texts, in all these diverse texts, are not accidental according to statistics. Believe it or not. So just to kind of something really important for statistics. In statistics, you can kind of talk about something being improbable if it's not within a 95% probability. There is this thing called Gaussian bell curve, and essentially the way statistics works is kind of something can fall inside this bell curve or in the outer 5%. So if something is in the outer 5%, it's unprobable. Okay, so that's essentially statistics. And Fomenko, analyzed a whole bunch of different words in different texts, and just kind of did some linguistic analysis. And according to him, these are not mere coincidences. They do not fall in the sort of regular 95 Gaussian bell curve percent. Okay, they are outside of it. So there must be some shady, fishy business going on in history. And he did lots more kind of statistical analysis, and he essentially came up with a mind-blowing, incredible conclusion that history as we know it, we're talking about history after the 16th century. By the way, he's not questioning kind of Renaissance, French Revolution, these kind of anything that happened after 1600, he's not questioning. But according to Fomenko, anything before 1600 is pretty much a scam. Okay, like the history as we know it is a scam. Okay. So he says that it's all made up, and it's just a bunch of tricks being done by Jesuits. And there is one bad guy he names specifically, and that is Cardinal Scaligeri. Okay, Scaliger, he's also known as. So this Jesuit priest, he invented history as we know it, according to Fomenko. So, for instance, there was never any ancient Egypt. It was just made up. Just they took essentially Persian, Middle Eastern history and stretched it into 2,000 years and said, well, that was ancient Egypt for you. And according to Fomenko, Egypt, like this civilizations which built pyramids, existed in the Middle Ages, from essentially 1000 to 600 AD. He said that kind of ancient Greece, Byzantine Empire, they're all just, multiplied fake entities. Like they essentially took, let's say, modern Italian history and just stretched it for hundreds and thousands of years, and made up ancient Rome. Okay, that's Fomenko's theory. Like, and all these events, such as the Mongol invasions, the Crusades, they did happen, but at a different time, for a different period of length, and for different causes. Okay, and there is, he wrote like many volumes about this stuff, but essentially, history as we know it is a scam made up by Jesuits. Anything before 1600 is, either falsified or stretched or, distorted in some other way. So bizarre, weird, absolutely, but, just kind of curious. You see the thing, so let me tell you, why would I make a video about this, weird theory? You see, Fomenko deals with a lot of physical evidence, cathedrals, art, coins, like actual physical artifacts, and he brings really interesting things to your attention, which without him you would never have known about. Like for instance, mummies. Okay, like there are these ancient, mummies. Okay, they're very super ancient. Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, thousands of years old. And Fomenko asks a really interesting question. When do we have the latest mummy? Okay, when these Egyptian coffins with all these Egyptian hieroglyphs, when was the latest mummy buried? Like when is the you can say youngest mummy that we have? How old is it? And it's 150 years. Okay, just 150 years. Egyptian Copts, they were kind of faithful to the ancient Egyptian traditions, and Christian Egyptian Copts have had those mummies with hieroglyphs, and some of them are a mere 150 years old. I mean, it's kind of interesting, physical evidence he gives you, and there's a lot of other fascinating little archaeological things, and you might agree with it, you might disagree with it, but it's just really kind of interesting, food for thought. And I myself, I don't believe in it. I do believe in kind of official mainstream history, you can say, but it's something you should just check out. Okay, it's interesting.
Cheers, bro. That was brilliant. Yeah. It's a theory, his story, his story of the chronological. Yeah, we're sort of skeptical. We have to study him more, find out more about him, and read more on him, because then all those archaeological or archaeologists will be lying, these historians, etc. We're skeptical with that, but we agree with the Jesuit claim this man, Denis Kozivnikov, was stating that there's something behind the scenes, or someone behind the scenes, an organisation behind the scenes, that's pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, okay, giving them hype, fluff, BS. We've verified that. We can verify it through the research of this Brian guy in this video that we can put up, the American Bible Society and their lies. You'll be amazed at what he's found. What we've found is that your biblical stories may be Latinized form of Greek, translated into English, Americanized English, so all your Bibles are modern, Americanized modern Bible versions. They're not of the original languages, or translated from the original languages as claimed, as you've been led to believe, because if they were, then they would be akin or very, very close or near exact to the ancient, the original ancient or very old Lishana Artika Cypriot of the old, that's the old sacred scribal old tongue that the Old Testament scriptures are supposedly written in, originating from the Assyrian Aramaic or Tav Asherit, copied by scribes and monks around 800 BCE in Ur Edessa, now modern Turkey, and the New Testament in the Galilean Aramaic, the language that Christ spoke and his 12 disciples all spoke and recorded all that they saw and heard or witnessed in that language, because they were Galileans, as Christ was a Galilean. And this is was given to the original Church of the East, founded by a couple of the disciples, supposedly Thomas and Thaddeus, along with Adai, who, when the Church of Jerusalem was destroyed, they fled across lands to China, went through China, left a stele there. There's Chinese writing on top, and supposedly was Aramaic found underneath. And then they went on to India, founded 7 to 9 churches there before they were martyred. Supposedly some of them ended up starting up churches in old Japan. So we look at all of that information from the Assyrian patriarchs through their debates, their lectures online, and we compare them with the modern day preachers, teachers, evangelists, Christians, etc., the three organized religions, mainly Judaism and Christianity, because that's our forte. We'll pick on Islam later, because that's part of the three, right? Rather than the latter pagan religions, okay, but we would get to them at some point. So we look at all of those, comparing them with the original manuscripts of the original language, translated into English by a native-born Mesopotamian with 15 years' experience in translating the ancient or very old Aramaic scriptures, right? Because he found a way to revive that dead language, etc., etc., and translated them into the nearest English equivalent, and staying faithful to what those original manuscripts or scriptures were actually saying, without, like other translators that he discovered, were adding their prejudices, bias, their own opinions, twisting it, adding their flavour, etc., etc. So as Barthe Ehrman says, you don't have the original complete Greek text. You only have fragments the size of a phone or cell phone, mobile phone card, okay? And all these other, all the versions of the Bible, etc., that you have today are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies, or a copy of copies of copies of copies of copies, not of the original manuscripts. Okay. So you need to study, do your own personal research on all of this information. Don't believe us, don't trust us, even though we have honesty as our best policy, and we believe in the old time chivalry, where a man's word is a man's word and he should honour it, stand by it, etc., etc. Okay, and we're not here to give you any fluff, hype, or other BS, or pull the wool over your eyes, con you, trick you, and say, give us some money because God says so, etc., etc. We don't have a bar of that. Again, because our mission statement is honesty is our best policy. Yeah, so we agree with this Dennis guy's statement about the Jesuits. Yeah, probably involved there, because we did years ago read supposedly translation of the French Judaism principles, etc., what they're really up to behind the scenes, into English, and it states that they recruit these people into their brotherhood, their order, and the whole thing is that they must go forth into other religions, especially the three major ones, and pose as part of that team, and he calls division, etc., etc., start arguments, so it causes that division, that separation, etc., and so forth. That's their whole oath. I'm not too sure about the protocols of Zion, the elders of Zion. We could say this, or we could say that. We've got our own reserved ideas. Old history, latter modern history might circumstantially prove or verify these things that they've said in those protocols of the elders of Zion. Yeah, and if you like to talk about that, you get called anti-Semitic or whatever, but that's not what we are. Yeah, so we basically delve deep into all of that. So we urge you to do the same. Go do your research, your own personal research. Look at the claims, establish the claims as actual fact. They become established facts. Check out these scribes and monks, etc., these writers, and try to prove that they're actually infallible or irrefutable, and then their writings will be deemed infallible, therefore irrefutable. Let the evidence prove itself, etc., etc. Yeah, it's all over to you. Thank you for the time you took, your time to watch our latest video. Subscribe to our channel if you really liked it. Give us a thumbs up. Add your comments down below because we really like those. It helps us to grow. Subscribing helps us to grow as well. We appreciate those who have subscribed, those who have and then dropped off, and then others that have viewed our videos over the last few years. You've really helped us to grow. You are much appreciated. And then don't forget to tell all your friends about us. This appears on the Ministry of the Real Truth. Say, well, yeah, these guys really dive into the truth. That's the truth. And they bring you the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and no BS. Go check out the Ministry of the Real Truth channel on YouTube. And we will see you on the next video. If there's a part 2 to this, ensure that that notification bell is set correctly so you don't miss out on it.